We typically do a presentation every year to our spotter group, the ham radio spotters up at the National Weather Service. So this is kind of a hybrid kind of thing that we hope to reach beyond just the people that are currently participating, and some folks that may not have ever done SKYWARN or are curious what it's about. So we're kind of opening it up to a little bit more of a broader audience. So today we're going to talk about some weather highlights from 2020. We're also going to get into the nuts and bolts of the SKYWARN activation process. Look at some enhancements to the weather station in recent years, to the WX1GYX ham radio station up there at National Weather Gray. We'll review some of the forms, log sheets, some of the documents that we use regularly. Talk about the new DMR talk group, and also the WinLink process. We do accept weather reports via WinLink as well. So we'll get right into this. We're also going to explore new ways to encourage individual hams and also ham radio groups across Maine and New Hampshire to support this cause. So before I get into the actual storms, I did want to talk a little bit about what SKYWARN is. And what it is we use, our portion of it is we use ham radio as a tool to get weather information, ground truth weather information to the National Weather Service, so that they can use that information to either issue warnings, update warnings. It's real time, it's live time information, and also to confirm warnings. All of those details are important. And it's not a passive sort of communications. You know, this is happening during the event, during the weather event. So it's real time. We do during severe weather, very severe weather, summertime or winter weather, we do follow-up work. And that work confirms the warnings that were issued during the storm. So for example, if there was a suspected tornado, we may send somebody out to observe the area, take photographs, report back what they see. That will help the National Weather Service determine whether or not they need to send somebody there to do an actual tornado confirmation. So that information is it's very vital. Every piece of it. It's multi-phased. So with that, we'll get into what happened in 2020, weather-wise. Because there's a lot that happened in 2020. So the winter storms, it was actually a pretty mild winter. We didn't have too many of the big storms that we're used to. Kind of a bit like how this winter has gone so far. January, we had a couple of moderate snowfall type storms. There was one in the 8th, and then the 16th to 17th. You look on our info here, this one here on the 16th and 17th was one of the bigger ones in the winter. As you see that yellow section, in the darker yellow section, had some up to a foot of snow in some areas, western Maine and into the White Mountains and beyond, out to the Connecticut River Valley. We also saw quite a bit of these. These are snow squall warnings. Snow squall warnings came about, I think it was 2018 that we first started seeing these. And the purpose of these is mostly they are issued along traffic, where there's high amounts of traffic, highways, that sort of areas. So as you see, this one's covering a good section of I-93 and Route 3. So that it's a travel advisory more than anything. And then they're smaller, a small portion of the area that is affected by it. And those warnings are very quick. They pop up whenever there's a report of heavy snowfall in a certain area, and they go down pretty quick. So that might last for 15, 20 minutes at the most. But what it is mostly the impact is on travel more than anything. So that's a new warning that's been implemented by the National Weather Service. And we started seeing a lot of those last year. So 2020 was a mild winter as far as storms go. We had a few storms that I mentioned of about 6 inches or more, but it only happened about 3 times through the whole winter. And so we had the storms January 16th, 17th, February 6th, and then we had a late one in April 9th to 10th. On the 27th of February, we had a nor'easter, but the nor'easter that hit our area was more of a rain and wind event. If you remember, a lot of people had flood basements as an effect. You get the frozen ground and high water and poor drainage, and you get some flooding due to that. We received multiple reports from Bethlehem, Lancaster, Littleton, and Franconia, New Hampshire of wind damage from the storm, including trees and wires down. And there's also widespread power outages. We saw another significant snowfall type event that took place in April. And that one affected more of northern western Maine, outside of our forecast area. And Portland area we're mostly spared in that. So if you look at the snowfall map here, down our area, it was 3 to 6 inches. Not a lot of snow, but to the north of us, it was a pretty big deal. Severe storms. So the spring was kind of cool. So we didn't have much in the spring. Once June and July hit, though, we did get a bunch of severe storms. Strong thunderstorms passed through the area on July 8th. There was a hail event, a lot of hail reported, Buckfield in Rangeley, Maine. In Franklin County, the Rangeley Fire Department reported the 85-mile-per-hour wind gust, which is pretty significant. And there was also multiple reports of trees down as a result of that. You can see the picture of the hail there. It's pretty good size hail. July and 11th, we did have, it was one thing to mention, is it was a very active year as far as tropical weather went. We got grazed by or impacted by several tropical storms throughout the year, or remnants of hurricanes. First of which was Tropical Storm Faye. And this one I remember very distinctly, Tropical Storm Faye in our area. I remember being out, it was a Saturday morning that it passed through. And I remember being outside, I mowed the lawn, it was a beautiful morning. But I noticed the shear in the upper atmosphere. You could see the wind, just upper winds, just moving. And I remember mentioning it to Eric. I sent him a message. I said, beware, there's going to be something happening later on in the day. Sure enough, tornado warnings were issued. There was one that was actually sighted near Sebago Lake. It was on the ground for 4.8 miles and touched down a little bit after 3:30 p.m. And that's a picture of it over the lake, as you can see. It was the EF0 tornado. Typically, that's what we see in this area, but still, that's wind speeds of 85 miles an hour or more. And this was the first reported tornado in New England in 2020. And it did some damage. You can see the picture of the shed when looks like the metal roofing came down. Maybe a porch. I'm not sure what was there before, but did some pretty good damage. And a couple days later, we had the atmosphere was still very unstable, and we had some severe thunderstorms come through, and big time hail event down in Biddeford, Kennebunk, Sanford area. And one of the reports that first reports that I was aware of, I work at an auto dealership. We had a parts delivery driver down in Kennebunk, and he sent me a picture of the roads. They were covered with hail. I mean, it was just white. It looked like a snowstorm, completely blanketed with hail, lawns, everything. And very shortly thereafter, we heard about the damage that Mark Motors was affected by. Hail severely damaged over 1,000 vehicles on their lot in Sanford. And so that was pretty significant, big time hail event. And that was pretty widespread throughout Biddeford Pool, Kennebunk, and parts of Sanford.
And Tim, also during that event, we also had a number of ham radio operators that generally appreciated our service for that storm, because I've actually had a ham out of Lewiston to call me up and make a call to his daughter saying that there's a tornado out there because he was so concerned. So, you know, it does affect people dramatically, and eventually, you know, it is good to have, but the more people that we can report, the better outcome we can get out of it.
You bring up a good point there, Eric, because a lot of people, when they think about SKYWARN, it seems like it's a one-way communication. It seems like we're getting on the air looking for reports, and we are most of the time. But it works both ways, because in Eric's example, that was a ham who heard the warnings that were talked about on ham radio and was able to notify a family member. So it does help to disseminate that information as well and get that out into other channels. So that's part of the service that doesn't get talked about very much, because we do, when we get on there, we're looking for reports. We are often reading the warning and what the significance of that is. So as we move along to end of July, there was a tornado warning. This was up a little ways in Maine, Newport, Bangor area, right on the fringe of our weather forecast area. We don't typically get reports from that area. That's Caribou's section. But we actually did get some reports out of the storm. As you can see, it was a tornado that was indicated on radar. So you can see the shear in some of these graphics. That's wind shear going two different directions, indicates rotation. And the good thing about this particular storm was, while it showed rotation, there was sighting of funnel cloud. It didn't touch the ground, so it did not become a tornado. But the warnings were issued, and there was some significant rotation going on in this event. August 4th and 4th and 5th, this was the remnants of Tropical Storm Isaias. And this one got a lot of media play. It was on the news because it was affecting good part of the eastern seaboard as it moved north. And we had tropical storm warnings that we were under during this time. There were coastal warnings. We're pretty prepared for this one when it came through. It did produce a considerable amount of power outages, especially in New Hampshire. Eversource reported 140,000 people out of power in New Hampshire. And a bunch of roads were closed down trees and wires. We got a lot of reports out of southwestern New Hampshire in this storm. There were a lot of trees down, a lot of wires down. It may have also contributed to the death of a woman in North Conway because a tree came down on her house, if I remember correctly, and it was contributed to her death. So unfortunately, this was a killer storm. There was some tornado watches issued with this, and if I remember right, most of the wind was not tornado related. It was more straight line wind, but it was still a pretty significant storm, and it impacted our area quite a bit. So here's some of the warnings that were issued in a couple weeks later, August 22nd through 25th. We had a rash of severe thunderstorms come through. This one produced tornadoes. There was tornadoes in Ospey and Belknap counties in New Hampshire from this line of severe storms. The photos, as you see, that is from Windham, New Hampshire, the hail. And that was on August 22nd, so part of the storm system. And by the way, anybody that's interested, the hail reports, regardless of the size, there are always good reports. National Weather Service is interested in that because it does tell a lot about the thunderstorm, what it's capable of, what stage the storm is in, things like that. So any sort of hail report is a good one. And this was probably shortly thereafter. So maybe end of August. We were, as you can see, Portland, Maine, number 4 in the country as far as tornadoes. And which is unusual because usually National Weather Wichita is the one that is the leader in tornadoes. So it was a little bit of a strange year, as you see a Philadelphia area, not too far away, still in the Northeast, with 23, and Albany with 15. So pretty crazy year. It was a pretty active year.
You know, this surprises me that we actually beat Boston that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the way the storms traveled, and a lot of it was those tropical, the tropical storms, the remnants of those.
Yeah, because I know the BOX group down there usually has an enormous amount of activity, like tornadoes down there. So this is even news for me. So
not the greatest of news, but at least they were pretty minor ones. But still, yeah, it's a strange thing to see Maine being up there that high on the list. Another thing, if you remember, as the summer was going on, it was extremely dry. Even though we had these severe storms, they were very brief. They didn't bring a lot of moisture. Maine was approaching a 20-year high for the number of wildfires as a result. And if you can look on the graph there, we had at this point 941, and the most recent time before that looks like 2001, about 990. So very, very dry year, and there was a lot of wildfires as a result.
Right.
As of September 24th, there was 1,000 of them reported in Maine.
Yep.
And we actually did, it's kind of interesting because we did our, Cumberland County did our SET based around a wildfire scenario in the fall of 2019. And a lot of people were saying, like, we don't get that right. What's that? Why are we doing this? But as it turned out, it was probably good foresight.
Also, any places where there's dense forests, there's prone for wildfires because of the debris and the damage left over from the rotten trees. So any kind of areas that are, not maintained, such as like trees down that dried out, and simply overgrown areas near properties and such, that does tend to have the tendency of sparking wildfires. But there's also, if the vegetation is too close to your property structures, then it could also include the fire into your structure itself. So you're gonna take precautionary measures when it comes to that stuff, especially in the dry seasons. So back to you, Tim.
Yeah, and that's I was going to mention the storms contributed to that too. You get a lot of the tree debris, branches down, things like that. Those just sit on the forest floor, and it's fuel for a forest fire. So
also, lightning can spark a wildfire if it's a dry lightning. Yep.
So in the fall, so it kind of quieted off a little bit after that, and then later in the fall, about October or beginning part of October, we got a few severe storms because the weather was cool in mid to late September. It kind of cooled off, and we didn't get a lot of thunderstorms. But October, things kind of changed, and we got some severe weather as a result, as you see on that radar. That was a pretty big storm that passed through mostly northern western Maine and parts of northern New Hampshire. But we got a significant amount of reports out of that storm. I think it was October 7th. And one interesting note, is the SPC officially classified this event as a derecho, which is a very rare occurrence in New England. And that is a wind gust of 58 miles per hour or higher along a path of at least 250 miles. It's typically they get those out on the western states, but this was actually classified as a derecho. So it's kind of interesting. So it's an interesting thing for this part of the country. And we continued to get tornado warnings as the fall progressed. We had one on October 10th. And this one actually, we got a ton of flooding reports. We got wind damage reports, but we actually got a lot of flooding reports out in the Connecticut River Valley out of this one around right on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. And that's typically what we get from that area, or road washouts and things like that. And this one produced a lot of that.
Also, Tim, I don't know if anybody's aware, but we do actually get avalanche warnings in our zone up in the Mount Washington area. And lots of times, you know, it goes unnoticed and people don't realize that it actually happens. But there is an occurrence that on Mount Washington, up on the higher peaks towards the countrysides, that they do produce avalanches if the conditions are right. And every now and then my weather radio would be going right off the hills, you know, ringing like crazy because of an avalanche warning. And so that is a process that's out there that not very many people have heard, but it does happen if you do live in the countryside of New Hampshire of Coos up there.
Yeah, actually, there's a fella that we talk to every once in a while in the Mount Washington repeater. His name's Rich, and he spends the winter in a cabin up on Mount Washington, and he's the avalanche patrol. He does a lot of goes on the trails and checks them for safety and things, and he reports back some interesting things. There's some crazy weather that goes on up there.
Yep.
Moving along, in December of 2020, not too long ago, we were doing SKYWARN recognition day. It's usually a fun day. We get on the radio, we make a bunch of contacts. We talk to different SKYWARN spotters, different National Weather Service stations and things like that. We were doing that from our homes this year because of COVID. And we had to cut things off about noon on that Saturday because a real storm happened. And we changed things over to an actual SKYWARN activation to get weather reports for that. And this is a pretty big storm. The one on December 5th, we got a significant amount of snow. There was a lot of wind as well. This was a heavy snow event, and took down a lot of trees, power lines, just because of the weight of the snow. It was very wet snow, if folks remember. And then a couple weeks later, we got another one, December 17th. And the picture you see there, I-93, looks pretty much impassable. That was on December 17th, part of that snowstorm. Picture on the left-hand side was Eric working on candlelight there during the December 5th storm.
Yippee.
So here's a couple of pictures here. This was an interesting one on December 17th. If you look up at the upper right, that is a band of snow that was stationary for a long time. They got in that, if you're in that box, you've got a ton of snow, and it didn't move at all day long. I remember, I think it was the Monday morning of that storm, and I remember being at work that day, and it just snowed and snowed and snowed. It was like never ending. We got another one on Christmas Day, and the Christmas Day one, we didn't get a lot of snow to the south of us. They did down in Massachusetts, but for us, it was more of a wind event. We got quite a bit of reports of wind damage from that storm, but it didn't add too much to our snowpack. The December 17th storm, however, it was a record event for Concord, New Hampshire, and areas around there. 24.2 inches in Concord. So that's it for our annual review. So a lot of folks that we talk to, we give our presentation to people who are weather spotters a lot of times, and they're aware because they're weather geeks. You know, they're kind of in on it, and they're watching the storm, so they know what's happened throughout the year. But for the broader audience, a lot of times these events happen if they don't affect us right here where we live or where we are at that time. We don't know it occurs. So it is kind of to wrap things up. Just shows how diverse our weather is for one thing, and also that there's a lot going on out there. So if you don't see it, like I mentioned, the morning that we got all the tornado reports back in early July of last year, it was a beautiful day here in Saco. You would not know there was severe weather anywhere, but just to the north and west of us there was, and so those things can be pretty isolated, and it's just important to kind of be aware of what's going on.
Yeah,
we'll talk about some ways that you can find that information.
I know I was getting that snow.
So look at how you can help. Weather warnings are not automated. You might think they are. They said that it's an automated process for how they distribute them, but there are actual weather forecasters who are doing the science. They're doing all kinds of calculations and things to predict what's going to happen, looking at various different models. So it's a human process using machines as a tool. But one of the most important pieces is just our very own eyes and what is occurring and what is actually happening, because you can look at radar, you can look at all these different models and things, and they only can tell you so much. And a lot of what it's limited to is, for example, like a radar can tell you that there was a tornado like we saw earlier occurring, but that never touched the ground. You wouldn't know that unless you had the spotter's eyes telling you that there's a funnel cloud, but it didn't touch the ground. So it's important to in that respect. We use radio as a tool to gather information. So as us being, we have the spotter network is people from all different walks of life. Not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be a ham radio operator, but our piece of it, we use the radio as a tool to gather the information and to report it back to the Weather Service. So we collect and relay ground truth reports to the National Weather Service. Most essential part of the job is the net control. If you're experiencing severe weather where you are, if you don't hear an active net, because sometimes you might not, it could be a very isolated event. There might not be a lot of lead time. There might not be a lot of preparation involved. So if you don't hear something, but there's severe weather happening where you are totally allowed to and encouraged to get on and start a net, start taking reports. And this is especially true in the summertime with thunderstorm events. Some thunderstorms, they can happen cover very, very small areas and affect very small areas, where other parts of the state can be beautiful. So it's that's very important to know that you can, if the criteria is there, the severe weather is happening. If you don't hear somebody taking reports, then take the initiative and get the reports. And we'll teach you how, if you're interested in doing that, in how you can report that information. Always be aware that even if the weather is not severe where you are, and this is a pretty important thing, that it can be somewhere else, especially within the range of your radio. If you're getting on the DMR network, for example, you're talking to a pretty widespread area, and it could, there could be severe weather in a place that's far away that you're not aware of yet. At the workplace or away from the ham shack, use an HT. Monitor the DMR SKYWARN talk group. Monitor your local repeaters where you typically hear SKYWARN activity. So take it with you and keep it portable if you can. So not too many people are aware of this. Our area of responsibility is gigantic. The entire state of New Hampshire and most of western and southern Maine. This stretches from Waldo County, so Somerset County to the north, Waldo County to the east, all of southern and western Maine, and the entire state of New Hampshire. So that's all the way to the Vermont border and to the Massachusetts border. So it's pretty huge. And we typically, when I send out my SKYWARN announcements, I include the ops that operate on Mount Greylock out in Western Massachusetts, N1PUA, because they can reach into the Keene, New Hampshire area. So you have to take advantage of that coverage area of that repeater. Similarly, we get a lot of mobile people that are traveling along Route 2 or I-91. You know, that area up there that are, you know, maybe talking to folks that are within range of our weather forecast area. So it's pretty broad. There's a huge area that it covers, and it is a huge responsibility to cover all that. So these are the type of notifications that we send out. I typically send an email notification. We have a pretty good working relationship with the weather forecasters. When they know of an event, is that something's going to take place. There's a lot of lead time to something, say a big snowstorm, tropical storm kind of thing. They'll alert us to it, and I'll use that information to send out an activation request out to our mailing list. But there are also ways that you can keep track of what's going on your own, and one of those is the Hazardous Weather Outlook. Hazardous Weather Outlook is produced by the National Weather Service. You go to the GYX site. You can just type in National Weather Service Gray, Maine. It'll say hazards. Just click the little icon that says hazards. It'll take you right to the HWO. And this is updated a few times a day. It's pretty good information. And whenever they anticipate spotter activation, they will put it right in the Hazardous Weather Outlook. So it's a good way to know what's coming, whether it's going to affect your area, and also they send us some information in there about whether or not they expect there to be an activation. We also use social media with our own ham radio group locally, and I encourage other folks, if you're operating a Facebook or a Twitter site for your own ham radio group, also to disseminate that information. So if there's going to be severe weather, you see it in the Hazardous Weather Outlook, or you get a email that something's going to come, send it out to your group of people so they know what to expect. Station updates. I have to preface this by saying that since COVID, most of this equipment has been removed because they have to spread out the forecasters. But it's in storage. It'll be put back in place once everything gets back to normal. But since about 2014, we've been doing some gradual improvements to the ham station at the National Weather Service. Supplied them with a lot of organizational supplies, headphones for the radio. It's a very noisy place. If you're there during a severe weather event, there are weather forecasters yelling at each other across the way and talking. It's very active. It's very noisy. So it makes being on the radio kind of difficult. So we supplied headphones. We realized headphones were like the most needed thing when we first did an activation there. VHF, UHF scanner. It's important to monitor what's going on the public service channels. And so that's another way that we get reports as well. There may be times that I ask somebody. So if we're getting a ton of reports from a certain area, I might get on the radio and ask somebody that's there to listen to their scanner at home and report what they hear, because it's more information. It helps. So any bit of information that can support what's going on, especially you hear road closures, things like that happening. Put a Morse code key in there. Mouse pad, time clock. Time was another thing. There were no clocks anywhere to be found. And then we built some quick reference guides for the radios as well. So just more organizational, kind of logistical things to keep it running smoothly. The next batch of upgrades we did was we put a signal link USB for both the UHF, VHF radio, and the HF radio. They have a FT8900 dual bander for VHF, UHF, and I think it's a Kenwood TS890, maybe something like that. It's a small basic HF radio, Kenwood HF radio that we use. So we got all that working so that we have the interface with the computer it's on site. So we can connect to WinLink. We can connect to, we can do the FL Digi suite we can use to send and receive messages. So it's very well, it's all integrated, all works very well. Around 2016, we also added the DMR radio as well, CS801 DMR radio. So we broadened by adding the DMR, we broadened the coverage area for that station considerably. So we can now reach out to parts of New Hampshire that we couldn't before. Some of the forms and things that we use at the office. We developed this severe weather report form. And this is something that as we're taking weather reports, if there's something that is critical that we need to report to a forecaster, we write it down, hand it right off to one of the forecasters that's there. The only place we use this is at the office in that situation. There are better ways of handling the reports if you're away from the office, if you're doing it from home, for example. But when you're there, it's easier to just write it down, put down your description and hand it off. And it gets inputted or used in whatever way they need it. When you're home, we have this. It's a Google sheet that we report things. This is live time. So when you enter something in the sheet, if you're a net control operator, you're taking reports, you're on the radio locally, you enter your reports, it immediately goes right to a forecaster. So it's a system we developed together with Donald Dumont up at the National Weather Service, and it works pretty awesome. And you can see when it's logged by a forecaster, they change that little box on the left-hand side from a no to a yes. So you can see them turn green. So you know as you're going, those are turning green, means they're logging them on their end. And it works pretty live time. It's pretty useful. A lot of pushback from the ham radio community about this. And there's a lot of folks out there that believe that radio has to be the only tool that we use to relay information. And as far as the weather service is concerned, they need to get that quickly. And this works best for them. So we have to kind of work with what works with them. Prior to this, we were emailing stuff. We do have access to WinLink, and we have the signal links all set up, things like that, that when the internet goes down and things don't work, we have the ability to fall back on that. But daily use during a regular activation, that is just cumbersome, and it doesn't work well. So this is what we use during almost every activation. So if you are one of those ones that says we have to exclusively use ham radio, then I'm sorry, but we have to use the resources that are available to us and make the best of it. And in my view is that the ham radio is the tool to gather the reports, and then we use whatever the best method is at the time to relay that information to the National Weather Service. So that may be radio someday, when things go seriously wrong, but most of the time, 99.99% of the time, we can use this. So, we do use WinLink and FL message. So we use we check during an activation. We are regularly checking WinLink to get weather reports if they're sent that way. We don't get a lot there. We do get some occasionally. If you do, you can do it one of two different ways. You can either use ICS 213 form, a radiogram form, or one of the weather reporting forms. I found some of the weather reporting forms that are in both FL message and WinLink are kind of cumbersome. There's a lot of information there that is not necessary. So you can send it through an ICS 213 with your description of what happened, and as long as all the that information is there, that's all that really matters. So, but some people do like to use the weather reporting forms. There's just if you do use that, there's a lot of information there that is not necessary. A lot of boxes there, a lot of pieces to it that is not necessary to the report. It's not relevant to the report. So, but basically, any way you send that message, we're going to get it, and we'll get to the National Weather Service. When we're at the station, this is important. We encourage anyone that goes to the National Weather Service to activate the station to keep a log of everything that happens. The station logs for WX1GYX go back to 1986, which actually predates the existing National Weather Service. It goes back to when they were in Portland. So it's pretty cool. We have a history of all contacts and communications that go back to 1986. So it's pretty awesome to have that. And we just want to keep that going. And it's neat also to look back and see, the weather events, because you can kind of see what was going on, 30 years ago. It's pretty cool. So we just want to keep that going and keep that history, building on that history, and moving things forward. The SKYWARN Amateur Radio Network. So this is published on our website, and we actually needs to be updated because there's been a lot of changes to the KQ&L system. KQ&L is kind of fractured apart a little bit. So some of these exist standalone, but the links aren't there between them. So a lot of what we could reach directly from the Weather Service has changed a little bit because of that. But these are suggested repeaters. There's a few the folks over in New Hampshire have been really good at giving me the information about what they use. Typically, they use their Aries repeaters to do SKYWARN on. There's not an activity, they don't participate in every single activation that we have, but the big ones they do. If I go into the over to the White Mountain Amateur Radio Group during a big snowstorm, for example, they have some activity going on their repeaters. Same thing for Central New Hampshire. We'd like to get every single one of them on board, but it's good to see some activity from some of those. And the main ones as well, we've gone through over the years to find what covers the counties the best. And so these are suggestions. We've been in contact with some of the local repeater control operators just to make sure they were cool with it. But there's not a lot. These are if you see in the communications I send out that say we suggest, just based on the nature of the storm that's coming, we suggest local, you do a local call-up, local net control. This would typically be the repeaters that we would suggest they do that on. And it happens occasionally. We don't get a lot of reports from these, but we've done all the legwork. We figured out what works where, and had a lot of input from people to formulate this. So and it works in exercise situations. We've done quite a bit, but we do need more. We need more help. We need more local net controls that can take this upon themselves, take responsibility of their county or their area, and contribute to it in that respect.
Tim, do you use Ham Shack Hotline?
I don't, no.
All right, neither do I. Because I had a question. There was a question on chat if we used Ham Shack Hotline during the event. So
I don't, but we can definitely look into it. Yeah.
So
scripts. So scripts they don't look like this anymore. They've been updated quite a bit. But we publish the scripts. So if you want to be net control, you want to get out there, get some reports, you're not sure what to say, we have a script basically for any scenario whatsoever. So if you get tongue-tied, you don't know what to do, don't know what to say, or what to ask for, pick the script that meets the scenario. Here's a winter weather one. You simply say, this is WX1GYX, net control for SKYWARN, in contact with the National Weather Service in Gray, Maine. And we are looking for reports of this. And you can read what you're looking for specifically. So sometimes the scripts are a little too much. Once you've done it a few times, you get used to what to say. But it helps the newcomer for sure. So highly recommended that you at least familiarize yourself with the scripts. It gives you a good idea of what to ask for. Weather is weather. It never falls perfectly in one of these categories. And the forecasters may be looking for something specific, and we'll try to communicate that as best we can to you. But it's a good place to start, and it helps you get started, helps you get going.
So another thing, Tim, during the high tides and astronomical high tides, people who live along the coastline, they will experience coastal flooding. So like if you're driving by down through Portland or something and you notice there's water on Commercial Street, report it to us. Or if you know down by like Camp Ellis that the whole town's underwater or something, report it to us.
Well, we get a lot of reports from Wells. Wells is like that.
Yep. And we also get a lot of reports from Northampton as well, from coastal flooding as well.
Going over the road.
Yep. So it's one of those things, if you're ever by the ocean and if you see water on the land or over the banks kind of thing, feel free to give us a call.
Yeah, it's good information. Reportable. A lot of people they get kind of hung up on what's, is what I'm seeing worthy of reporting? Is it severe? Is it severe enough? And the answer is yes, because if it's not, if it's something that isn't, report what you see, no matter what. Don't be afraid to report it, because if you get that information to the forecaster, they're going to determine whether or not that's severe enough. We don't want to bombard them with things that are not severe, but most of the time it's going to fall into the categories of information they're looking for. So don't ever be afraid to report something because you don't know that it's bad enough. So, and obviously if it is bad enough, report it. But we get a lot of folks that are, seeing weird shaped clouds and don't know what they are, or report that it's windy, but there's not a lot of damage. There's just leaves and stuff down in the, that's all. It's good information, and we'll take that information and we'll send it to the forecasters, because it's going to help them out in some way. So don't be afraid not to report. Methods of contact. So we showed you the net control log that we use. If you're out and about, away from a radio, you can call it in, you can email it, you can send it as Twitter. We actually do encourage the Twitter ones because it's the easiest way to send a photograph. So if you see something, you want to take a picture of it, tree down, road closed, water going across the road, something that's worthy of a photograph, the quickest and easiest way is to tweet that to them. So just put it at NWS Gray, gets right to them. So as we move ahead, goals for 2021. We are actively talking about the possibility of adding packet capability at the station, at the weather station. That might not happen this year. We still can't get into the office. It's closed to the public. But when we do get back, we get things set up again and back up and running. It's definitely something we've been talking about doing that. We want to continue to develop local and regional subnets. These are those local nets I was talking about. And we want to work together with ARRL and other MCOM organizations, especially. We've got a good working relationship with some New Hampshire organizations, and we want to kind of branch out into Maine and start tapping into those resources. This is the best kind of training. Think about weather events or things that are unpredictable. We don't know when it's going to happen most of the time. Or we have very short lead time. So if you're looking for radio, emergency communications training for your ARRL group or whatever, this is the best live action training you can do, because you got to be ready, and you get on it at a moment's notice, and these are real-time events, real-time information that you're relaying. So it's a good practice for Aries groups. Eric and I have talked about introducing an NWS Gray SKYWARN official support club recognition program to encourage ham radio clubs and service groups to support the SKYWARN effort. We want to encourage more SKYWARN training in counties that are underserved. So this National Weather Service Gray typically does their training based on what's requested of them. This past year they did online, but when they do go out into the communities to do this training, they're going where they're asked to go. So if you have a ham radio group that wants spotter training done, either reach out to us or reach out to them directly, and they will schedule spotter training for your group. So a lot of folks they kind of wait around for it to come to them. But if you've got a good sized group of people that are interested in it, just get it scheduled, get it done. We want to continue to improve the workflow and evolve ways that best achieve the goals of National Weather Service Gray and the SKYWARN mission. And that is something that evolves over time. You know, what they're looking for, the type of information, and it's a constantly evolving thing. And most importantly, don't take things too seriously. We have to remember that we're involved in radio, and we're involved in SKYWARN and things like this, other service organizations, because we like it. So if you take yourself too seriously and you don't like what you're doing, then you're not gonna do a good job. So keep it light and enjoy what you do. So lastly, this is the information. We're in the process of creating this, so your input will help us as well. We're creating this SKYWARN support club or organization recognition. So if your ham radio club, for example, wants to become an official NWS SKYWARN support club, this is the criteria we've been talking about. So commit at least one liaison. A liaison is somebody that is the dedicated person, point of contact, basically, with your club and the SKYWARN team. And also one net control operator. So that could be the same person, it could be different people. So we're not asking for much there. One net control operator, one liaison, or it could be one person. And and also that person would activate local nets or be responsible for activating local nets as needed or requested by the National Weather Service. Participate in regional drills and exercises throughout the year. Maintain a list of trained spotters. They're also ham radio operators within your organization. Assist in hosting SKYWARN spotter training in your area. So you be the point of contact responsible for communicating with the National Weather Service to get the training set up. And actively support and promote the SKYWARN program. So you'd be like the ambassador for the SKYWARN program within your community, within your group. And what you'll get from us, you'll get guidance from National Weather Service Gray and also our leadership, support materials, access to the net reporting form. We're going to create a series of certificates and recognition to recognize your team's efforts or individuals within your team. Get some SKYWARN swag, and also a special logo that you can put on your team's website that indicates that you're an official support club. So that's kind of what we're building, and we're interested in what your feedback is on that.